Hello, this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech number 169, doing a modern deck tech on a deck that I think is going to be very popular over the coming months as Modern picks up steam with Modern Masters 2 coming out. And that is the Siege Rhino junk deck, or what I would call Rock Rhino. Let's look at this a little bit more closely. People have said that I'm crazy to say that Siege Rhino is better than Thragtusk. It's clearly better because it's modern playable. I really like this guy. I've got him on my buy list. I picked up a playset myself within the last week, and I'm going to pick up an extra playset just to hold on to for speculation because he's really cheap right now. If you compare him to creatures of the past, look at Burnham Djinn. This card was a powerhouse. A 4/5 for 4 casting cost that had a negative drawback. It gave your opponent's creatures Forest Walk. Comparatively, the Siege Rhino is a 4/5 with trample, which really matters in modern, and it gives you 3 life while costing your opponent 3 life. Really strong card. We've really seen the evolution of creatures to where they've gotten much stronger as time has gone on in Magic, and Siege Rhino is ready to take over modern at this point. The power level is really high. The trample matters because it's able to just go right over Lingering Souls. Doesn't mean that Lingering Souls doesn't matter in Modern. It's still a very powerful card that stops a lot of decks, like robots or some of the more aggressive decks. But Siege Rhino is an answer to Lingering Souls, and they even play well in the same deck. It also helps you deal with Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt is a defining card in the environment, and it takes 3 Lightning Bolts to deal with the 3 life that Siege Rhino has gained and to eliminate the Siege Rhino. Unless your burn deck is way out ahead, once you get to the Rhino, they're not going to be able to deal with you. This is the deck list that I recommend people taking a look at. This deck list beat me in the top 4 of a GP trial last week. Russell has a very solid deck list here. Some of the things that I want to point out about this deck, though, is that it is not a budget deck. This is one of the more expensive decks in Modern right now. I shopped around and I found all the cards for about $1,700, kind of crazy. A lot of it has to do with the fetch lands. There are some budget options if you want to try to build this deck without some of those cards. But let's look at one other deck first. This was from the week before, because I was definitely prepared for this deck going into the GP trial. It's a little more of a control version. This took second at a Star City Games Premier IQ the week before. Very similar shell, though. Scavenging Oozes, Siege Rhinos, Tarmogoyfs, Abrupt Decays, Lilianas, Inquisitions, Thoughtseizes. Very similar shell. And this is 2 major different tournaments, different areas. You're going to see a lot more Rhinos out there in the meta when it comes to Modern. For a budget option, the Tarmogoyfs, Thoughtseizes, and Fulminator Mages are the most expensive cards in the deck, not including the fetch lands, but you can't skimp on the fetch lands. You must have the fetch lands, and I'll go over that a little bit more. Doran is a very solid alternative to Tarmogoyf. Lingering Souls help some of your matchups a lot, and Duresses are the best option if you're going to run into a lot of combo decks. They're actually not bad against Burn either. Thoughtseize is pretty painful against Burn. You're often taking a Lightning Bolt, only saving yourself 1 point of damage and losing a card. So depending on your meta, there are some options to try to save yourself about $1,000 in constructing this deck. One of the best things I like about this deck, and particularly the version that I played over at Card Kingdom, is the Coursers along with fetch lands. You could also substitute in the new temples, although it does slow your deck down a little bit. But getting the card selection, having the option to reshuffle when the answer you need isn't there on top is very valuable. It helps your control matchup significantly, and it helps you against combo decks that are trying to go off a second time. The life gain matters a lot. I play red, white, blue, a version that tries to burn you down as quickly as possible. Having Coursers, Scavenging Oozes, and Siege Rhino's main deck means that burn decks and decks like mine have a serious problem with the life gain. This allows you a very, very strong game against other slow mid-range decks that don't go over the top of Siege Rhino also, and a great game against those aggro decks, especially if you have some backup, which I'll get to when I get to sideboarding. This deck also has 4 Lilies. The SCG version was only playing 3. I would be playing 4 right now. Lily is a house. The attrition decks are doing really, really well. Lily's great against creatures and great against combos. She's an all-star in this deck. Abrupt Decay is incredible removal. This is my favorite removal, both in Modern and in Legacy. It destroys a lot of threats, especially given how fast the environment is. Being uncounterable matters also. I've seen some of the Infect decks. I have a little bit of trouble with this. They really need to make their Infect creature hexproof or shroud in response to the Abrupt Decay and not rely on their counters. I like this card a lot. Your good matchups are going to be those that try to burn you out early because of your life gain, your Lightning Bolts, Wild Nacatls, or even the mid-range decks that don't go larger than a Hunt Master of the Feld. A 4-4 just doesn't beat that 4-5. Your bad matchups are going to be those that go over the top. Wormcoil Engine, Karin Liberated, maybe Ugin currently, and Primeval Titan are going to be a serious problem because they just have a threat that's so much larger than anything you have. You've really got to have your path to Exiles to deal with Wormcoil and Primeval Titan, or they take over the game right away. The playable matchups are those combo decks, whether they're combo decks like Bogles, which relies on creatures, or combo decks like Storm, which rely on Pyromancer's Ascension. They're not great matchups, but they're not bad matchups because you have hand destruction and you've got Lilies, and Lilies attack both of these decks equally. Lilies attack the creatures in Bogles, and they attack the cards that you need in hand. For Storm, having the Scavenging Ooze as main deck also makes it much more likely that you're going to be able to beat Storm in the long run, as they don't have that opportunity to go off again with either Pyromancer's Ascension or with Past Inflames. Sideboard is very, very powerful in these colors. If you're playing against burn, throw in Timely Reinforcements. It is the best. It gives you 2 Lightning Bolts worth of life and usually 3 1/1s. Batterskull just closes out the games to where they can never get back in it. Robots is a seriously tough matchup because they're so fast. Put in extra Path to Exiles, look at Golgari Charm, Creeping Corrosion can wipe their whole board. Engineered Explosives is one of my favorites because it's often a turn faster than the Creeping Corrosion and can wipe their boards. And Stony Silence will shut down things like their Cranial Plating. Tron is another difficult one. The Fulminator Mages are definitely in there for Tron specifically. Path to Exile is needed to deal with things like Wormcoil Engine. Batterskull is actually a powerhouse. If you can put it on top of a Siege Rhino, it pretty much goes over anything they have. And Thoughtseize is a very strong card against Tron. Before they've assembled Tron, it can pull out pieces from their hands so that they're not able to assemble it, or it can pull out threats that are much more powerful for just 1 casting cost. Against combo, you want to make sure you've got your Lilies and your Thoughtseizes maxed out. If you've got Duresses, add in extra Duresses if appropriate. Slaughter Pact is one of the cards that I really like for those creature combo decks, and Scavenging Ooze is often extremely useful, whether it's against a full Through the Breach type combo, where they also have a Reanimator package, or a Storm type combo, where they're going to be trying to go off again with cards in their graveyard. Let's all enjoy the Rhino.
What you gonna do with all that junk,
Thanks, this has been Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech. Thank you to everybody who's out there on Patreon supporting the channel. Next week, I'm going to have a list of best known and unknown colorless cards for EDH. I'm also working on some vintage and modern deck techs